Cassian's fingers closed around the Luna ring before Elara understood what he intended to do. The ancestral silver band resisted as he pulled it from her finger. Its moonstone flashed once beneath the chandeliers, cold light sliding across the faces of 300 pack members gathered in Nightfall's great hall. Elara felt the scrape against her knuckle. She did not pull away. Beside the throne, Seraphine Vale waited in a white ceremonial gown, one hand resting over her still flat stomach. "Nightfall cannot remain without an heir," Cassian announced. His voice carried through the hall with the force of an alpha command. "Seraphine is carrying my son. She will take her place as Luna." A murmur moved through the crowd. Cassian placed Elara's ring on Seraphine's finger. The moonstone dimmed. Seraphine quickly covered it with her other hand and smiled as if nothing had happened. Inside Elara's sleeve, a folded medical file pressed against her wrist. 2 hours earlier, moon healer Miriam had closed the infirmary door and placed that same document into Elara's hands. 2 weeks, Miriam had whispered, her lined face softening. "The heartbeat is too faint for anyone without healer blood to sense, but there is no mistake." Elara had stared at the royal seal beneath the diagnosis. Pregnant, after 6 years of waiting. 6 years of Cassian speaking about sons, bloodlines, and the future of Nightfall. 6 years of Elara wondering whether the absence of a child had turned every private disappointment into distance between them. She had planned to tell him after the anniversary toast. Now Cassian stood before their kingdom with another woman carrying his supposed heir. "Elara will remain in the royal household," he continued. "Her experience is valuable. She will assist Seraphine during the transition." That cut deeper than the missing ring. He wanted her labor after giving her place to his mistress. Elara looked at the man she had defended before councils, rival alphas, and her own doubting heart. Cassian's shoulders were rigid beneath his black ceremonial coat. He avoided her eyes for half a second, then forced himself to meet them. He believed this was necessary. He also believed she would accept it. "You want me to train her?" Elara asked. Cassian's jaw tightened. "I want you to put Nightfall before your pride." Seraphine lowered her lashes, performing discomfort with practiced grace. "I never wanted to hurt you, Elara." Elara turned toward her. "Then today must be very disappointing." A few people inhaled sharply. Seraphine's smile faltered. Council Elder Malrek rose from his carved chair near the throne. His pale eyes settled on Elara's sleeve, where the corner of Miriam's file had slipped into view. "Your Majesty," Malrek said, "perhaps Lady Elara requires time to compose herself." "No," Elara replied. "I require a severance document." Cassian went still. The mate bond pulled tight inside her chest, already sensing the choice before he did. "Elara," he warned, "you have named another woman Luna, and claimed her child as your heir." Her voice remained level. "I will not live in the royal wing as a discarded wife, nor will I serve the woman who helped replace me." "You are being emotional." "Then protect the kingdom from my emotions. Sign the severance." Malrek's attention sharpened. Seraphine gripped the stolen ring. Cassian descended from the throne. Up close, his scent of cedar and winter rain struck Elara with painful familiarity. "You have nowhere to go," he said quietly. "When your anger passes, you will understand why I did this." Elara removed the medical file from her sleeve just far enough to keep it from bending, then tucked it beneath her cloak. Cassian noticed the movement, but not the words printed inside. Malrek did. A scribe carried the severance paper forward. Cassian signed first, the pen cutting hard across the parchment. Elara read every clause, including the ancient provision protecting any future heir conceived before separation. Then she signed. The mate mark beneath her collarbone burned. Elara placed the pen beside Cassian's name. He gave her a look filled with confidence rather than loss. "You will return before the next full moon." Elara folded her copy of the severance paper and met his eyes. "By then, Your Majesty, you may finally understand what you gave away." She turned from the throne and walked through the parted crowd without touching her stomach. Behind her, Malrek leaned toward a royal guard. "Search her rooms," he whispered. "Find that file before dawn." Cassian thought Elara was leaving alone, but Nightfall's true heir was already leaving with her. Elara closed the bedroom door behind her and turned the lock. For 6 years, the royal chambers had carried Cassian's scent in every surface: the cedarwood wardrobe, the dark wool blankets, the carved headboard he had commissioned after their mating ceremony. Tonight, It no longer smelled like home. It smelled like a room she had been permitted to occupy until someone more useful arrived. She set the medical file on the vanity and opened a travel bag. No gowns, no jewels, no gifts bearing the Nightfall crest. She packed 2 plain dresses, winter trousers, a thick sweater, dried food, and the leather case containing her healer tools. Her hands remained steady until she reached the bottom drawer. Inside lay a pair of tiny knitted socks. Elara had bought them 3 years earlier during a trade visit, then hidden them after another month passed without a child. She held them against her palm. They were pale gray, small enough to fit beneath Cassian's thumb. Her throat tightened. She placed them inside the bag. The door handle moved. "Elara." Cassian's voice came through the wood with the same commanding weight he used in council meetings. She did not answer. The lock clicked open from the outside. As Alpha King, Cassian carried keys to every room in the royal wing. He stepped inside and shut the door, irritation sharpening his features. "You walked out before the ceremony ended." The ceremony had achieved its purpose. Cassian watched her fold another sweater. "Put the bag away." Elara continued packing. His gaze moved to the bare space on her ring finger. For a brief instant, something uncertain crossed his face. Then pride returned and sealed it away. "You are still part of Nightfall," he said. "Seraphine has no experience managing pack affairs. She will need instruction." Elara stopped. "You publicly replaced me and expect me to make the transition comfortable for her? This is larger than either of you." "No, it is exactly about the 2 of us. You made vows to me. You broke them with her." Cassian's eyes flashed gold. "She is carrying my heir." The file on the vanity seemed to pulse beneath the candlelight. Elara could have opened it. She could have placed it in his hands and watched his certainty collapse. But the memory of Malrek's eyes fixed on her sleeve returned with chilling clarity. If Cassian learned about the baby now, the council would invoke the Royal Heir Protection Act. They would confine her to the palace, surround her with guards, and call imprisonment protection. Cassian stepped closer. "Your anger will pass. Stay. Help Seraphine understand the pacts, and you will retain your position as royal advisor." Elara looked at him fully. He truly believed this was generosity. "You want my hands on the machinery while she wears the crown. I want stability. You wanted obedience. Stability was what I gave you." His mouth hardened. "Do not make me regret allowing the severance. You signed it because you thought I had nowhere to go." Cassian leaned near enough for the damaged mate bond to react. Pain knifed through Elara's chest, sudden and bright. She kept her face still. "You do not," he said quietly. Then he left. Elara waited until his footsteps faded before the strength vanished from her knees. She reached the bathroom and barely closed the door before another spasm tore beneath her ribs. Her shoulder struck the tiled wall. The bond had begun rejecting the severance, pulling toward Cassian even as her mind recoiled from him. Elara slid to the floor. A strangled sound rose in her throat. She pressed both hands over her mouth, refusing to let the guards hear. Heat burned through the mate mark beneath her collarbone. Her wolf paced inside her, confused, searching for the male who had severed them before an audience, and then followed her upstairs to demand service. Elara curled around her abdomen. "Stay with me," she whispered. The child could not hear words. The child was barely more than a hidden spark of life. Still, speaking gave Elara something to hold. Tears spilled across her fingers. She allowed them because no one was watching. She allowed herself 1 minute to mourn the future she had imagined, Cassian kneeling beside a cradle, his hand covering hers, their child sleeping beneath the Nightfall crest. Then she lowered her hands and forced herself upright. A soft scrape came from behind the wall. Elara froze. The carved panel beside the linen shelves shifted inward. Moon healer Miriam emerged from the narrow servant passage, carrying a satchel and a hooded cloak. "We have less than an hour," Miriam said. Elara wiped her face. "What happened?" "Your medical file is gone." Elara turned toward the vanity. The folder remained there, but Miriam crossed the room and opened it. The diagnosis page had been replaced by a blank sheet bearing only the royal seal. "They switched it while you were in the Great Hall," Miriam said. "Someone searched my records as well." Elara's blood cooled. "Malrek knows. He suspects." Miriam took a folded document from beneath her coat. "This is the copy I made before the ceremony." Elara opened it. Her name, the date, and the words approximately 2 weeks pregnant remained intact. Miriam pushed a small bottle into her hand. Willow bark, moonroot, and iron leaf. Safe for the child. Use only 3 drops when the bond pain becomes severe. Why are you helping me? The older woman looked toward the knitted socks visible inside the bag. Because the council issued an order to test your blood again before sunrise. They are not searching for a runaway Luna, Elara. They are searching for an heir. A bell rang in the courtyard, then another. Heavy boots began striking the corridor outside. Miriam handed Elara the cloak and unlocked the hidden panel. The eastern medicine gate leads beyond the inner wall. Once you enter the tunnel, do not stop. Elara lifted her bag. She took the medical file, the severance paper, and nothing else. Behind the bedroom door, a guard called her name. Elara stepped into the passage. Miriam started closing the panel between them. Protect the child, she whispered. Elara placed one hand over her stomach and descended into darkness. Above her, every alarm bell in Nightfall began to ring. The palace had not been sealed to stop Elara from leaving, it had been sealed to keep her unborn child inside. The tunnel beneath the eastern medicine gate smelled of wet stone, iron, and old herbs. Elara moved through the darkness with one hand against the wall and the other gripping her travel bag. Behind her, the alarm bells continued to hammer through Nightfall. Each strike traveled down the passage and into her bones. The moonroot medicine had dulled the worst of the bond pain, but nausea rolled through her in slow, punishing waves. She swallowed hard and kept walking. The tunnel ended beneath a wooden hatch hidden inside the royal supply yard. Elara pushed it open a fraction. 2 guards stood near the medicine wagons. Orders from the council, one said. Search every cart. Lady Elara may be carrying stolen royal documents. Stolen. The word almost made her laugh. The medical file described her own body. The severance paper carried her own name. Yet Malrek had already rewritten her escape into a crime. Elara lowered the hatch and studied the bundles stacked around her. Dried mint, bitter root, pine resin, and powdered wolfsbane filled the tunnel storage. She opened 3 sacks and rubbed the herbs across her cloak, hair, and boots until their sharp scents burned her nose. A wagon wheel creaked above. Elara waited until the guards moved toward the front gate, then climbed out beneath the rear axle of the last medicine cart. She pulled herself into the narrow space between crates and covered her body with a coarse wool blanket. The wagon lurched forward. Every bump drove pain beneath her ribs. She pressed her lips together and counted the turns she knew by memory. Left at the infirmary wall, right past the winter granary, down the sloped road leading to the outer gate. The wagon stopped. Boots approached. A guard climbed onto the rear step and pushed aside the blanket covering the nearest crate. Elara held her breath. Her pulse beat against the medical file tucked beneath her coat. Nothing but fever tonic, the driver said. The guard sniffed the air. Wolfsbane made him recoil. Move. The wagon rolled through the gate. Elara did not breathe freely until the walls of Nightfall disappeared behind the trees. Cassian entered the royal chambers 20 minutes later. The open wardrobe struck him first. Elara's practical clothing was gone. Her healer case had vanished from the shelf. The jewelry he had given her remained untouched, arranged inside velvet boxes, as if she had never cared to own any of it. Seraphine stood in the doorway behind him, wearing the Luna ring. She took documents, she said. Malrek believes she may sell pack information to Elarion. Cassian ignored her. His attention settled on the empty drawer beside the bed. He remembered Elara kneeling there during winter, sorting blankets for displaced families. He remembered telling her to leave such work to the servants. He could not remember the last time he had thanked her. She will not cross the river, he said. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the ring. You sound concerned. I am preventing treason. The answer came too quickly. Cassian reached through the damaged mate bond. Pain answered him, sharp, distant, moving east. His wolf surged toward the sensation. Cassian turned to the captain of the royal trackers. Bring her back alive. By noon, the medicine wagon reached Frost River. Elara climbed down before the driver turned north. Snow had begun to fall, soft flakes melting against her face. The river below the ridge was swollen with winter rain, its black water striking the rocks hard enough to throw mist into the air. The main bridge stood half a mile downstream. It would also be guarded. Elara followed an abandoned logging trail until she found the older crossing, a narrow wooden footbridge suspended above the river by frayed ropes. A howl rose behind her. Trackers. She opened a pouch of crushed mint and bitterroot, scattered half along the eastern trail, then threw the rest into a stream leading south. The water carried her false scent toward the main bridge. 2 wolves appeared between the trees. Elara stepped onto the wooden crossing. The first plank cracked beneath her boot. She gripped the rope and moved faster. Wind tore at her cloak. Below, broken branches spun through the current. "Lady Elara!" a tracker shouted from the bank. "By order of the Alpha King, stop!" He signed away the right to order me. She reached the center. The bridge jerked. One tracker had shifted back and was cutting the western rope. Elara ran. A plank gave way beneath her. Her leg dropped through the gap, and the edge of the wood tore across her palm as she caught herself. Blood streaked the rope. She dragged her leg free. The bridge tilted violently. Elara jumped the final distance and struck the frozen ground on the Elarion side. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she rolled away as the bridge collapsed into the river. The trackers stopped at the opposite bank. They could not cross without violating Elarion territory. Elara rose unsteadily. Then the bond pain struck with enough force to steal her vision. She stumbled between the trees, one hand pressed to her chest. The medical file slipped from beneath her coat and landed in the snow. Dark shapes emerged ahead. 6 armed riders wearing black winter cloaks surrounded her with military precision. At their center sat a broad-shouldered man on a gray horse. His face was partly hidden beneath a hood, but his gaze was steady and severe. Elara reached for the small knife inside her healer case. Her fingers failed to close around it. She fell to one knee. The stranger dismounted and picked up the medical file. His eyes moved from the Nightfall royal seal to the blood on Elara's hand, then to the instinctive way she protected her abdomen. "Who are you?" Elara demanded. The man looked across the river, where Cassian's trackers still watched. Then he returned his attention to her. "First," he said, "tell me what kind of king hunts a pregnant woman through a winter forest." Before Elara could answer, her body gave way and the stranger caught her before she struck the snow. Elara woke to the smell of boiled linen, cedar smoke, and bitter medicine. A low ceiling pressed above her. Pale morning light leaked through frost-clouded windows, revealing shelves crowded with glass bottles and bundles of drying herbs. Her injured hand had been cleaned and wrapped. Her shoulder ached whenever she breathed too deeply. The medical file lay on a table across the room. So did her severance paper. A man stood beside them with his back to the fire. He had removed his hood, revealing dark hair, a scar near his right temple, and eyes the gray-green color of a winter river. 2 armed soldiers guarded the door. Elara pushed herself upright. "Those belong to me." "You collapsed on Elarion soil carrying documents marked with Nightfall's royal seal," the man replied. "Until I know why, they remain where I can see them." His voice was the same one she remembered from the forest. Elara reached for the edge of the bed when dizziness shifted the room. The stranger noticed but offered no hand. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elara Voss." One of the soldiers exchanged a glance with the other. The man's expression did not change. "Occupation?" "Healer. Nightfall sends healers across guarded borders without horses, escorts, or winter supplies. Nightfall did not send me." He lifted the severance paper. "It claims you are free of royal authority. It does more than claim it. You are being tracked." They were violating their own king's signature. His gaze settled on her bandaged palm. "What did you take?" "My own records." "And what are you protecting?" Elara's hand moved toward her abdomen before she could stop it. The stranger noticed. He noticed everything. Before he could ask another question, a child screamed in the adjoining room. The sound sliced through the healer house. A woman began shouting for help. Boots struck the floorboards, followed by the crash of a metal basin. Elara swung her legs from the bed. "Stay where you are," the stranger ordered. Another scream came through the wall, weaker this time. Elara ignored him. She crossed the room, pushed through the inner door, and found 3 healers restraining a boy no older than 7. His body arched against the narrow cot. Sweat soaked his pale hair, and gray shadows spread beneath his eyes. "Fever returned an hour ago," an older healer said. "We gave winter root." Elara caught the child's hand. A thin silver line marked the skin beneath each fingernail. "That is not winter fever." The local healer frowned. "You have examined him for 5 seconds. His blood is reacting to metal. Elara leaned near the boy's mouth. His breath carried a faint, mineral scent. Where does his family get water? The eastern well, the healer answered. Close it. The room went still. The stranger had followed Elara inside. That well serves nearly 200 people. Then 200 people may already be poisoned. The local healer folded his arms. Silver sickness spreads through bites or contaminated weapons, not wells. Refined silver does. Raw moon silver dissolves in cold water when mixed with wolfsbane ash. Elara pulled back the child's blanket. A faint rash curved along his ribs. This is the third stage. Check the others for marks beneath the nails. A younger healer moved toward the neighboring cots. Within moments, she found the same silver traces on 2 more children. The stranger's face hardened. How long do you need to prove the source? He asked. 12 hours. If you are wrong, the settlement loses its only functioning well during a freeze. If I am right and you wait, the children lose more than water. His eyes held hers. Then he turned to the soldiers. Seal the eastern well. No one drinks from it until she returns. The local healer stared at him. Commander, that was not a request. An hour later, Elara rode into the hills with the stranger and 4 soldiers. Snow hissed beneath the horse's hooves. Her palm throbbed under the bandage, but she kept one hand steady on the reins. They followed the stream feeding the eastern well. Near the upper ridge, Elara dismounted beside a patch of dead grass. A stag lay half covered in snow, foam frozen around its mouth. Its antlers bore dark stains. She crouched and scraped the soil with her knife. Silver dust glittered beneath the surface. This did not happen naturally, she said. One soldier found an empty clay jar beneath a fallen log. The inside smelled of wolfsbane ash. The stranger took it from him. Someone carried this here. To poison the settlement, Elara said. Or to make one pack blame another when the children began dying. His gaze shifted toward the valley where banners from 3 Elarion packs flew over neighboring ridges. By sunset, the well had been drained and sealed. Elara prepared a binding tonic that slowed the silver reaction. The boy's fever finally broke shortly after dark. She returned to the room where she had awakened and found the stranger waiting. A leather-bound report rested beside her medical file. Elara recognized it immediately. It was a Nightfall emergency distribution plan, written 3 years earlier in her own hand. The man opened it to the final page. The signature read, Luna Elara Voss. You identified a weapon our senior healers missed, he said. You knew how to contain panic before it reached 3 rival packs, and this report built the same system Nightfall now claims you stole. Elara said nothing. His eyes lifted to hers. I did not capture a wandering healer. I found the missing Luna of Nightfall. The man closed the Nightfall report and rested one hand on the leather cover. My name is Rowan Astor, he said. Alpha King of Elarion. Elara did not bow. The 2 soldiers near the door stiffened, expecting her to lower her head or drop to one knee. Instead, she stood beside the table with her bandaged palm pressed against the wood. Rowan watched her without offense. You knew who I was? He asked. I suspected you were more than a commander. That was not my question. No, I did not know. A trace of approval passed through his expression. He returned the medical file and severance paper to her. Then you have 2 choices. I can provide a guarded route to the neutral coast, where Nightfall's authority ends. Or you can remain in Elarion and help contain the silver sickness. Under what conditions? You work under contract. You are paid. You answer for your decisions before my council. Elara studied him. And what do you receive? A functioning medical system. His answer came without hesitation. Not obedience, not gratitude, not a claim over the child she carried. Work for work. Elara gathered the documents against her chest. I will stay. By afternoon, Rowan escorted her to Silverhold Fortress, a stone stronghold built above the frozen valley. 5 pack banners hung across the council chamber, their colors divided by old rivalries. The council members were already waiting. Alpha Brenner of Pinecrest looked Elara over with open suspicion. You brought Cassian Draven's former Luna into our capital. I brought a healer who prevented 3 settlements from turning on one another, Rowan replied. She knows Nightfall's defenses. She also knows how their medicine network works. Lady Cora, leader of the Western Pack, tapped one finger against the table. And when Cassian demands her return, Elara placed the severance paper in front of them. He already surrendered that right. Brenner read the first page, then pushed it away. Kings ignore laws when pride is involved. Then let Cassian expose himself as a king who cannot honor his own signature, Rowan said. The room quieted. Elara opened the Nightfall report. The poisoned well was not an isolated attack. Someone used moon silver because the symptoms resemble pack sabotage. If Pinecrest blamed Westmore and Westmore retaliated, Elarion would have lost 2 supply routes before spring. Cora leaned forward. How can you know that? Because the eastern well feeds both territories. The poisoner chose a source that would create shared victims and separate accusations. Rowan looked around the table. Evaluate her by the evidence, not by the man who failed to value her. No one answered immediately. That evening, a guard led Elara away from the fortress, toward a small stone cottage behind the royal herb gardens. Smoke rose from the chimney. A narrow bed, a writing desk, and shelves for medicine waited inside. Rowan placed a brass key in her hand. Elara turned it over. How long may I stay? As long as your contract remains active. And the cost? 4 silver marks are deducted each month. The house becomes yours after 2 years. She stared at him. Cassian had filled wardrobes with gowns she never chose, then reminded her that everything belonged to Nightfall. Rowan had offered one modest house and placed the ownership terms in writing. He set a contract on the desk. Salary, working hours, medical authority, the right to resign. Elara looked for the hidden demand and found none. What do you expect in return? She asked again. Rowan removed his gloves. Competence. A sharp cramp twisted low in her abdomen. Elara's breath caught. The key slipped from her fingers. Rowan moved forward, but stopped before touching her. Elara? She gripped the edge of the desk. Another cramp followed, deep enough to weaken her knees. The child. Rowan crossed to the door and called for a healer. He did not ask who the father was. He did not demand to see the medical file. When the healer arrived, Rowan stepped outside and closed the door. The examination felt endless. Elara lay still while healer Mara pressed warm hands over her abdomen and listened with a moonstone instrument. The room smelled of lavender oil and hot iron from the stove. At last, Mara exhaled. The heartbeat is steady. The pain came from exhaustion, stress, and the bond injury. Elara closed her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the blanket until the trembling passed. Mara opened the registry. Who should I list as your family contact? Elara looked toward the closed door. Cassian's name rose in her mind and died there. No one. The door opened slightly. Rowan remained outside the threshold. Write that she is under the protection of Elarion. Mara nodded and entered the words. Before midnight, a royal messenger arrived from Nightfall. Rowan read Cassian's letter in the council chamber. It accused Elara of stealing royal documents, abandoning her duties, and carrying property belonging to the Nightfall crown. At the bottom, Cassian demanded immediate extradition. Brenner looked uneasy. Refusing could be treated as an insult. It is intended as a threat, Cora said. Rowan placed Elara's severance paper beside the letter. The ancient clause concerning freedom from royal command remained visible beneath Cassian's signature. He pressed Elarion's royal seal into black wax. Request denied. Then Rowan handed the response to the messenger. Tell Alpha King Cassian that a free woman is not property to be returned. Far away in Nightfall, Cassian broke the sealed refusal open and saw another king's crest protecting the wife he had believed would always belong to him. By the 4th month of Elara's pregnancy, the brass key to the cottage no longer felt borrowed. Bundles of feverfew hung from the rafters. Ledgers covered the writing desk. A narrow cradle, built by one of the border carpenters, stood beside the hearth beneath a folded gray blanket. Outside, Elarion was still fighting the silver sickness. Inside Silverhold's council chamber, Alpha Brenner drove his fist against the table. Pinecrest gathered those medicines. My pack will not surrender half its winter supply because Westmore failed to prepare. Across from him, Lady Cora's eyes narrowed. Your hunters blocked our wagons. Do not call theft preparation. The 5-pack representatives began speaking over one another. Elara remained standing before the wall map. Her stomach curved beneath her dark wool dress. The thin scar across her palm pulled tight as she placed 3 red markers beside the affected villages. If Pinecrest keeps the medicine, she said, Westmore loses 43 people before the next moon. Brenner scoffed. A prediction. Elara opened a pack ledger. 43 registered patients. 12 children. 9 pregnant women. 6 healers already showing symptoms. The chamber quieted. She placed a second ledger beside it. If Westmore collapses, their southern road closes. Pinecrest loses access to grain within 18 days. You will preserve your medicine and starve before spring. Brenner stared at the numbers. Rowan sat at the head of the table, silent. He could have used an alpha command and forced compliance. Instead, he allowed Elara's evidence to do what power alone could not. Cora examined the map. How much must he release? 1/3 today, Elara said. Another third after Westmore sends grain north. Elarion's royal stores replace both packs before the next snowfall. And if the crown fails? Brenner asked. Elara slid the agreement toward him. Then my salary and property become collateral. Rowan's expression hardened. That clause was not authorized. It made him listen. Brenner read the page, then signed. After the meeting, Rowan caught up with Elara beneath the stone archway. You wagered your home. I wagered on a plan that works. You could have asked me to guarantee the shipment, and taught the council that every agreement depends on your personal favor. Rowan's mouth shifted, almost a smile. You are difficult to protect. I did not come here to be protected from every decision. No, he said. You came here and began making better ones than the rest of us. The first contractions came during the worst blizzard Elarion had seen in 12 years. Wind battered the healer house hard enough to shake snow from the rafters. Mara had barely prepared the birthing room when every moonstone lamp went dark. A guard burst through the door. The power channel was cut. Elara gripped the edge of the bed as pain tightened across her abdomen. Not cut, she managed. Frozen lines cracked near the northern wall. Heat the copper junction before you reconnect it. Mara stared at her. You are in labor. I am still capable of remembering how the building works. Outside, Rowan organized soldiers around the healer house. Whoever had damaged the power lines might return, and he refused to leave the entrance unguarded. He did not enter the birthing room. He heard Elara's breath break behind the door. Heard Mara call for hot water. Heard the storm swallow every other sound. Hours later, a newborn's cry rose above the wind. Rowan's eyes closed. When Mara opened the door, blood marked one sleeve of her dress, but she was smiling. A boy, she said. Rowan looked past her only far enough to see Elara awake beneath the blankets. Is she safe? Mara paused. Most kings asked about the heir first. She is exhausted, Mara said, but safe. Elara heard him. A tear moved silently into her hair as she held the child against her chest. She named him Lucien. Years passed through small, ordinary victories. Lucien took his first steps between rows of lavender, while Elara pretended not to notice Rowan following behind, with both hands ready. At 2, the boy developed a fever. Rowan remained beside his bed through the night, learning how to measure moonroot drops without waking him. At 3, Lucien shifted one hand into a wolf's paw during breakfast and knocked a bowl of berries onto Rowan's council papers. At 4, he climbed onto Rowan's lap during a meeting and fell asleep against the king's chest. Elara became head of Elarion's healer council. The medicine network she designed reduced winter deaths across all 5 packs. Border families began calling her the Silver Healer. One afternoon, Lucien ran through the royal archive, while Elara examined an ancient crown kept beneath glass. The moment her scarred hand touched the case, silver light moved through the metal. Every guard in the chamber dropped to one knee. The royal historian went pale. The silver crown answers only to the blood of Queen Aveline's line. Elara stepped back. That bloodline ended. No, Rowan said from the doorway. He held an open genealogy record bearing the same crescent-shaped birthmark Lucien carried beneath his collarbone. It was hidden. Before Elara could speak, a messenger entered with a sealed invitation. Nightfall's black wolf crest marked the wax. The letter summoned Elarion's future Alpha Queen to the Inter-Kingdom Council. Lucien touched the seal with one curious finger. Elara stared at Cassian's name beneath it, untouched for nearly 5 years. Cassian was waiting to meet Elarion's next queen, unaware that she would arrive holding the hand of his son. The medicine vault beneath Nightfall's palace should have smelled of cedar shelves, dried moonroot, and clean iron. Instead, it smelled of dust. Cassian stood in the center aisle, while the quartermaster opened one empty cabinet after another. Glass jars had been scraped clean. Linen bandages were rationed to the border packs. The emergency silver fever tonic was gone. "How long?" Cassian asked. The quartermaster swallowed. 3 months, Your Majesty. And no one reported it? We did. The man's gaze dropped to the floor. Cassian's wolf stirred beneath his skin. To whom? Luna Seraphine. The title sounded wrong in the hollow vault. Cassian turned toward Beta Garrick, who waited near the stairs with a stack of unopened petitions. Why are the southern packs refusing their winter tax? Garrick placed the petitions on a crate. Seraphine ended their healer subsidies. She redirected the money to the coronation wing. Cassian's jaw tightened. Her coronation took place 4 years ago. The renovations did not. One petition carried the seal of Ashwood Pack. Another came from Riverbane. A third announced that Pine Hollow would no longer send grain until Nightfall restored the relief agreements Elara had negotiated. Cassian opened the oldest letter. The first line addressed him as Alpha King. The second asked whether Nightfall still honored the laws its former Luna had written. He looked around the empty vault. For years, Elara had walked these aisles before dawn, checking inventory with ink on her fingers and sleep still in her eyes. Cassian had called it administrative work. He had never asked how many lives depended on her handwriting. "Where is Seraphine?" he asked. In the eastern salon. Music drifted through the palace before Cassian reached the royal wing. Seraphine sat beneath a painted ceiling while 2 seamstresses adjusted the silver embroidery on a new gown. The Luna ring rested on her finger. Its moonstone remained dull. Cassian dismissed the attendants. Seraphine looked up. "You could have knocked. The medicine vault is empty." Her expression barely changed. The packs exaggerate every shortage to demand more coin. Children are dying in West Hollow, and Elara's old system was wasteful. Cassian crossed the room. Her system kept 12 packs supplied through 2 winters. Seraphine rose, silk whispering around her ankles. "Then perhaps you should invite her back to run it." The words struck harder than she intended. Cassian's eyes flashed. Seraphine softened her voice. "I lost our child, Cassian. Have you forgotten what that did to me?" He had not forgotten. For years, she had blamed the loss on poison placed in her tonic by servants loyal to Elara. 3 healers had been exiled. 2 had disappeared before trial. Cassian had accepted Seraphine's grief because questioning it felt cruel. Now he asked, "Where is the original pregnancy record?" Seraphine went still. "The council archive." I checked. A pulse moved in her throat. "Malrek handled those documents." "Then we will ask Miriam." Seraphine's face sharpened. "That old woman betrayed the crown. She examined you." "No. Malrek's healer did." The admission hung between them. Cassian stared at her. "You told me Miriam confirmed the pregnancy. I told you the royal healers confirmed it. You let me believe it was Miriam." Seraphine folded her arms over her waist. "You wanted an heir. I gave you hope when your wife gave you nothing." Cassian's aura rolled through the room hard enough to rattle the windows. "Do not speak of Elara." Seraphine laughed once, bitterly. 5 years, and she still owns every room she left. Miriam arrived at the palace under guard before sunset. She looked older, but her spine remained straight as Cassian placed Seraphine's file on the council table. "Is this authentic?" he asked. Miriam did not touch it. "No." Malrek sat 3 seats away. "Careful, healer." Miriam ignored him. "The ink is correct. The seal is not. Someone used a copied mold." Cassian's hand closed around the table's edge. "Was Seraphine ever pregnant?" "Not according to any examination performed by me." Seraphine pushed back from her chair. "She is lying." Miriam opened a leather case. "I kept copies because Lady Elara feared the council would alter her records." She removed a folded medical file and set it before Cassian. His eyes found Elara's name first, then the date. The same night he had taken the Luna ring from her finger. Gestational age, approximately 2 weeks. The room narrowed around him. Cassian read the line again. Elara had stood before him carrying his child while he declared another woman the mother of Nightfall's heir. She had hidden the truth because she had not trusted him with it. His fingers began to shake. Miriam's voice remained calm. The council knew before she crossed the border. Cassian looked at Malrek. The elder did not flinch. Garrick entered with a sealed dispatch from the Inter-Kingdom Council. "The Elarion delegation has confirmed attendance." Cassian forced his eyes away from the medical file. The official list named Rowan Astor, 5-pack representatives, and the chief royal advisor, Elara Voss. His breath stopped. Beneath her name, another line identified Elarion's young bloodline witness, Lucien Voss Astor, age 4. Cassian folded the paper once, then reached into the locked drawer where he had kept the original Luna ring for 5 years. He placed it inside his coat. The king who once promised Elara would crawl back was now carrying her ring across 2 kingdoms to beg for a place in his son's life. The bronze doors of the Inter-Kingdom Hall opened at noon. Cassian stood beside Nightfall's black throne, surrounded by pack leaders, royal guards, and council elders. He had faced invading armies without allowing his pulse to change. Then Elara walked through the doors. She wore no trace of the woman who had fled Nightfall beneath a servant's cloak. Silver armor framed her shoulders, and a narrow crown rested above her dark hair. 5 Alpha banners followed behind her, each lowered in recognition of her authority. Rowan Astor walked at her right side. He did not lead her. He matched her pace. Cassian's gaze dropped to the child holding Elara's hand. Lucien was small for the power rolling quietly beneath his skin. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and his serious expression looked painfully familiar. Cassian had seen that same face in childhood portraits, locked inside the royal archive. The boy had Cassian's jaw, his brow, even the slight narrowing of his eyes when he entered an unfamiliar room. But Lucien's irises were silver. Elara's eyes. Cassian forgot the prepared greeting. Lucien leaned closer to his mother. "Why is that man staring at me?" The question carried through the still hall. Elara followed her son's gaze. For the first time in 5 years, her eyes met Cassian's. Nothing in her expression reached for him. "That is Alpha King Cassian of Nightfall," she said. Lucien waited. Cassian waited too. Elara offered no other title. "Not your father, not my former mate. Only a king from another realm." Rowan placed a steady hand near Lucien's shoulder without touching him. The child relaxed instantly. Cassian felt the movement like a blade beneath his ribs. Malrek rose from the council platform. "Elarion's delegation is welcomed. We understand the Silver Crown has recognized Lady Elara as its rightful successor." "Alpha Queen Elara," Rowan corrected. Malrek's smile thinned. Elara stepped forward and placed Elarion's royal seal on the central table. "The 5 packs confirmed my succession 3 weeks ago. I attend this council as Elarion's sovereign." Several Nightfall elders lowered their heads. Cassian could not. He remembered Elara standing in this same hall, with a bare finger and a medical file hidden beneath her sleeve. He had believed he was watching a discarded wife walk away. He had been watching a queen leave his kingdom. The formal session lasted less than an hour before Cassian requested a private conference. Elara agreed only after Rowan confirmed 2 Elarion guards would remain outside the chamber and Lucien would stay with him. Cassian closed the door behind them. "You named him Lucien." Elara remained standing. "It was my grandfather's name. He is mine. He is not an object." Cassian flinched. "I did not mean, you did." Elara placed the severance paper on the table. "You demanded my return as property. Your letter used that word. I did not know about the child. The council did." Cassian's face darkened. "Miriam told me, and Seraphine signed the order authorizing trackers to bring me back by force." Elara placed a second document beside the severance paper. Seraphine's signature marked the bottom beneath Malrek's seal. Cassian read it twice. "I would never have allowed them to harm you. You had already harmed me." His hands curled at his sides. "Why did you not tell me?" Elara's expression finally changed. Pain passed through it, old but not forgotten. "Because that night, I watched you place my ring on your mistress's hand and announce that her imagined child mattered more than your living mate." Cassian looked away. "If I had told you," Elara continued, "you would have confined me under the Royal Heir Protection Act. Malrek would have controlled my food, my healers, and every room I entered. I would have protected you. You could not protect me from yourself." The words left no space for denial. A sudden shout came from the hall. Elara reached the door first. Lucien stood beside the central table, one hand resting on Nightfall's ancient royal seal. Silver light spilled between his fingers, mixing with the black fire of the Draven bloodline. The child's body went rigid. "Lucien!" Elara ran toward him. The seal cracked down the center. A pulse of alpha power swept through the hall, forcing several wolves to their knees. Lucian collapsed before Elara reached him. Rowan caught the boy and lowered him carefully to the floor. Elara pressed 2 fingers beneath Lucian's jaw, searching for a pulse. "He is breathing," she said. "Move back." Malrek struck his staff against the stone. "Seal the hall." Nightfall soldiers closed every exit. Cassian stepped between them and Elara. "Open those doors." Malrek remained calm. "The child has awakened the dual crown clause. Until his claim is examined, no potential heir may leave Nightfall territory." Rowan rose slowly, Lucian held against his chest. "You will not imprison a child." "This is not imprisonment," Malrek replied. "It is royal protection." Elara lifted her head. 5 years earlier, those words had driven her into the snow. Now they threatened her son. Her silver eyes brightened with alpha power. "Then open a public hearing," she said. "Tonight. Before every pack and every visiting crown." Malrek smiled as the doors locked behind them. He had waited 5 years for Lucian to return, and the law had just placed the boy within his reach. The public hearing began beneath the fractured royal seal. Lucian lay awake on a padded bench beside Rowan, pale but alert. Elara had examined him twice. His pulse was steady, though silver light still flickered beneath the crescent birthmark near his collarbone. Every door of the Interkingdom Hall remained guarded. Pack leaders filled the lower benches, while the 5 Elarion alphas stood behind their queen. Malrek raised his staff. "Lucian Voss has awakened the dual crown clause. By ancient law, Nightfall has the right to hold any child carrying the Draven bloodline, until his claim is determined." Elara stepped into the center of the hall. "You are attempting to use a succession law to justify kidnapping." A murmur spread through the crowd. Seraphine emerged from the royal aisle, wearing a black ceremonial dress. The Luna ring sat on her finger, its moonstone coated in a faint layer of silver powder. "She hid the king's heir for 5 years, Seraphine declared. Elara abandoned Nightfall, stole royal documents, and raised Prince Lucian under another man's name. Rowan's expression remained controlled, but his aura darkened. Elara lifted one hand. "He is not a prince until he chooses to accept that title. He is a child before he is anyone's heir." Seraphine turned toward the pack leaders. "She speaks of choice, after denying his father the truth." Elara placed the severance paper on the central table. Cassian signed this document before witnesses. Clause 14 states that any child conceived before severance remains under the mother's protection if the father failed to acknowledge the pregnancy. Cassian stood near the throne, his face rigid. "I did not know," he said. "No," Elara replied, "because the people advising you made certain you would not." Healer Miriam entered carrying a locked leather case. Malrek's grip tightened around his staff. Miriam opened the case and removed 2 medical files. "This is Elara Voss's original examination," she said. "It was completed on the morning of the anniversary ceremony." She placed it beneath the hall's truth lantern. The royal seal glowed blue. "Approximately 2 weeks pregnant," Miriam continued. "Healthy maternal blood. Stable early development." Cassian closed his eyes briefly. Miriam placed Seraphine's record beside it. The truth lantern flashed red. Seraphine's voice sharpened. "That proves nothing. It proves the seal was copied," Miriam said, "and the blood sample did not belong to you." Elara turned toward Seraphine. "Place your hand on the oath stone." Seraphine did not move. "If you carried Cassian's child," Elara continued, "swear it before both kingdoms." Malrek struck his staff against the floor. "This hearing concerns Lucian's claim, not a private tragedy from 5 years ago. It concerns the lie used to remove Nightfall's lawful Luna," Rowan said. "The same lie that placed Lucian in danger before he was born." Cassian faced Seraphine. "Touch the stone." Her eyes searched his face for the man who had once defended her without question. He was gone. Seraphine stepped backward. Miriam produced a 3rd document. This order authorized trackers to return Elara by force. It carries Seraphine's signature and Malrek's seal. The pack leaders began speaking at once. Malrek's staff struck the floor again, but no one fell silent. Seraphine's composure broke. "You all benefited from it," she shouted. "You wanted an heir. You wanted a Luna who smiled and obeyed instead of correcting every decision made in council." She turned on Cassian. "And you wanted her gone because she made you feel smaller on your own throne." Cassian stared at her. The accusation wounded because it held enough truth to survive every lie around it. Malrek moved toward the guards. "Take the child into royal custody." Nightfall soldiers hesitated. Cassian's command cracked across the hall. "No one touches him." Malrek's face lost its calm. Seraphine reached beneath her dress and drew a silver dagger. She crossed the distance to Lucien before the nearest guard reacted. Rowan pulled the boy behind him, taking the blade's path with his forearm guard. Elara was already moving. She threw a small glass vial against the floor. Pale vapor rose around Seraphine's feet. The woman coughed, tried to raise the dagger, and found her fingers no longer obeyed her. "Elara," she gasped. "What did you—" "A nerve-binding herb," Elara said. "The same one your hired men carried when they tried to seize me at the border." The dagger fell. Nightfall guards restrained Seraphine, while Rowan checked Lucien for injuries. The child was frightened, but unharmed. The Luna ring slipped from Seraphine's numb hand. It struck the oath stone and split through the moonstone. The hall went silent. Malrek looked toward the nearest exit. Miriam blocked his path. "You hid more than medical records," she said. Elara placed an ancient genealogy scroll beside the broken ring. Queen Aveline's crest appeared beside her mother's name. Malrek's expression changed. 30 years of secrecy surfaced in one breath. "Elara's mother was the Silver Crown heir," he admitted. "If her daughter bonded with Nightfall's king and produced a son, 2 kingdoms could unite beyond the council's control." Cassian descended from the throne. He stopped before Elara and lowered himself to one knee. From inside his coat, he removed the original Luna ring and placed it at her feet. "I cannot recover the years I lost," he said. "But give me one chance to become his father." Elara looked at the ring. She did not bend to pick it up. The evidence had condemned Seraphine and Malrek, but Elara's final judgment would decide what Cassian was allowed to keep. The broken Luna ring remained on the oath stone, while the verdicts were read. Seraphine stood between 2 guards, her wrists bound with silver thread restraints. Without the ceremonial powder covering her scent, the hall could finally smell the bitter herbs she had used for years to imitate pregnancy symptoms. Alpha Brenner read the charges aloud. Forgery of royal blood records, conspiracy to seize an unborn heir, attempted kidnapping, use of a poisoned weapon against a child protected by 2 crowns. Seraphine lifted her chin. "Cassian chose me." The words no longer carried triumph. They sounded like the last defense of someone standing in the ruins of her own ambition. Cassian did not look at her. Elara did. "He chose badly," Elara said. "That does not erase what you did." The 5 Elarion Alphas and Nightfall's pack representatives voted together. Seraphine was stripped of the Luna title, her inheritance, and every claim held by House Vale. The northern territories her family had exploited would be returned to the packs that worked them. Her wolf rank was severed under oath law. She would spend the rest of her sentence at Frostwatch Fortress, copying the names of families displaced by the war schemes she had helped create. No servants, no jewels, no royal visitors. When the guards removed the cracked Luna ring from the stone, Seraphine lunged toward it. One guard stopped her. "It belongs to me." "No," Miriam said quietly. "It never did." Malrek received no gentler judgment. His council seat was abolished, his wealth seized, and his name removed from the royal archive except where it appeared in the record of his crimes. As soldiers led him away, the remaining Nightfall elders lowered their heads. Their power had depended on silence. Elara had ended it with documents, witnesses, and the law they had used against her. Cassian remained on one knee after the hall emptied. The original Luna ring rested on the floor between him and Elara. Lucien stood several steps away with Rowan. The boy watched Cassian with cautious silver eyes, one hand wrapped around Rowan's fingers. Cassian looked at his son, then back at Elara. "I will surrender the throne, if that is what you require." Elara's expression did not soften. "Losing everything in one grand gesture would be easier for you." His brow tightened. "You will remain king," she continued. "You will dissolve the old council. Each pack will elect its own representative. The medicine routes will be restored before winter, and every family harmed by Seraphine's schemes will receive compensation from the royal treasury." Cassian slowly rose. "And Lucien? He will know who you are." Hope moved across Cassian's face too quickly. Elara stopped it. "You will not take him to Nightfall. You will not use Alpha Command around him. Every visit will be supervised until he is old enough to decide what relationship he wants with you. He is my son. He is not your second chance. Cassian absorbed the words without protest. For the first time, he looked less like an Alpha King and more like a man forced to stand inside the consequences of his own decisions. I loved you, he said. Elara glanced at the ring on the floor. You loved the certainty that I would stay. She stepped around it. I do not hate you, Cassian, but forgiveness is not a road back into my life. Lucien looked up at Rowan. Are we going home now? Rowan crouched beside him. When your mother is ready, not when the council allowed it, not when the kings finished speaking. When Elara was ready, she crossed the hall and took her son's free hand. Yes, she said. We are going home. 1 year later, lavender covered the southern gardens of Elarion. Elara stood beneath an archway of white roses, reviewing a trade report while Lucien chased a wooden practice sword across the grass. Rowan approached carrying 2 cups of tea and placed one beside her papers. You promised not to work today, he said. I promised to consider it. That sounds suspiciously like council language. She looked up, amusement warming her eyes. Rowan set a small wooden box on the table. Inside lay the Queen's ring of Elarion, a simple silver band set with a clear moonstone. He did not take it out. I will not ask you to give up your name, he said. I will not ask Lucien to forget his blood, and I will never ask you to become smaller so I can feel like a greater king. Elara's throat tightened. Rowan rested one hand on the table, leaving the choice untouched between them. I want a life beside you. Nothing taken, nothing owed. Lucien had stopped playing. He stood nearby with grass stains on his knees, trying very hard to pretend he was not listening. Elara picked up the ring. Stand beside me, she said. Not in front of me. Rowan's smile was quiet. Always. She placed the ring on her own finger. Their wedding took place in that same garden at sunset. Healers, soldiers, border families, and representatives from all 5 packs filled the paths between the lavender. Lucien carried the rings. Halfway down the aisle, he dropped one, picked it up, and announced that royal ceremonies needed better pockets. Elara laughed so freely that several guests began crying before the vows even started. Years later, she and Rowan welcomed a daughter named Mira. Lucien grew into a thoughtful young wolf who understood that blood could explain where a person came from, but love revealed who stayed. Elara continued to rule Elarion. Her healer academies spread across both kingdoms, and no alpha could again use mate law to imprison a rejected woman under the excuse of protection. At Nightfall, Cassian restored the medicine routes and kept every condition Elara imposed. He was allowed brief visits with Lucien, but he never heard the boy call him Dad. That name belonged to the man who had remained through fevers, nightmares, first shifts, and ordinary mornings. On the 10th anniversary of Elara's coronation, she stood on Elarion's balcony with Rowan beside her, and both children laughing in the garden below. Far across the border, Cassian sat alone beneath Nightfall's black crest, reading reports of the queen he had once believed could not survive without him. Elara had not returned to prove Cassian wrong. She had built a life so complete that his regret no longer mattered. So, Elara's story closes here not with the man who betrayed her, but with the life she chose after him. Are you still here with me? Then you already know this was never only a story about an unfaithful king. It was about what happens when someone is betrayed, misunderstood, and humiliated, yet refuses to beg for a place where respect has already disappeared. Elara was hurt. She cried. She carried fear, bond pain, and a child no one knew about. But she did not let pain decide who she would become. She walked away before bitterness could turn her cruel, and she rebuilt her life one choice at a time. We cannot control who lies to us, who replaces us, or who realizes our value too late. We can control whether we keep abandoning ourselves just to make someone else comfortable. And honestly, if a man needs 5 years, a collapsing kingdom, and a secret son to understand your worth, he may not be the genius he thinks he is. Elara's greatest victory was not Cassian's regret. It was waking up in a home where she was respected, loved, and free. Comment, dignity. If you believe walking away can be an act of strength, and if Elara's journey stayed with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.